Today, we're diving into a condition that you've probably felt, even if you had no idea what it was called. We're talking about cubital tunnel syndrome.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there, right? You knock your elbow just right, and that weird electric buzz zings all the way down to your pinky. It's just a universally awful feeling. But what if that feeling didn't just go away after a minute? What if it stuck around?
Well, that's exactly what cubital tunnel syndrome is. It's what happens when that funny bone nerve, which is actually called the ulnar nerve, gets squeezed or annoyed as it passes through a really tight spot on the inside of your elbow. So let's connect those dots. We're going to see exactly how that temporary accidental zap can actually turn into a chronic, nagging problem that messes with your everyday life. Think of it this way. Cubital tunnel syndrome is when the funny bone just stops being funny. The nerve gets trapped, or maybe it's repeatedly irritated, and suddenly those classic symptoms, the tingling, the numbness in your hand, they become a constant companion instead of just a fleeting accident. So to really get why this happens, we need to take a quick peek at the anatomy. Come on, let's follow the path of the nerve that's causing all this trouble. Okay, meet the culprit, the ulnar nerve. Now this nerve is a pretty big deal. It's one of the main nerves in your arm, and it has a super long journey. It starts way up in your neck and runs all the way down, ending in your ring and little fingers. It controls a ton of muscle movement and feeling along the way. So check out its route. It leaves the neck, comes down the arm, and then it has to navigate this very narrow channel on the inside of your elbow. That's the cubital tunnel. And right there, that is the critical pinch point. It is, by far, the most vulnerable part of its entire trip. You know, the best analogy for this is a garden hose. It's perfect. When that ulnar nerve gets kinked or squished in that tunnel, the information, the water in this case, it just can't flow through properly. And that blockage is exactly what causes the numbness and weakness you feel downstream in your hand. Okay, so how do you know if you actually have it? Let's break down the warning signs and talk about how doctors figure it all out. The classic signs are all tied to where that nerve goes. So numbness and tingling, especially in your little finger and ring finger, that's the #1 symptom. You might also get pain right at the elbow. Notice your grip feels weak, or just find it clumsy to do simple things like buttoning a shirt. And here's the huge clue. It often gets way worse when your elbow is bent for a long time. Why? Because bending your elbow can shrink that tunnel by almost half, putting a major squeeze on the nerve inside. Now, it's really easy to confuse this with carpal tunnel syndrome, which everyone's heard of, but they're completely different. The key is the nerve and the location. Cubital tunnel is the ulnar nerve at the elbow, and it affects your ring and little fingers. Carpal tunnel is the median nerve at the wrist, affecting your thumb and other fingers. Different problem, different spot. So when you see a doctor, they'll start just by talking to you about your symptoms. Then they'll do an exam, maybe gently tapping on the nerve, that's called Tinel's sign, to see if it creates that zinging feeling. But to get the definitive answer, they can do what's called a nerve conduction study. It's basically a speed test for your nerve signals. If they find a big slowdown right at the elbow, well, that's the smoking gun. That points directly to compression. The good news here is that there's a really clear path to getting better. So let's look at the two main approaches, the non-surgical route, and then when surgery might be on the table. For most people, especially with milder symptoms, you start with conservative care. The whole goal is to reduce that irritation without surgery. But if that doesn't work, or if the case is more severe with muscle weakness, then surgery becomes the best bet. This could be a decompression, where they just make more space, or even a transposition, where the surgeon actually moves the nerve to a better, less crowded spot. You know, the first line of defense is always the simplest stuff, and it works incredibly well. It really is all about learning what bugs the nerve and then just stopping. Every time you lean on your elbow on a hard desk, you're squishing it. Every time you sleep with your arm bent sharply, you're yanking on it. Making these small, conscious changes gives the nerve a much-needed break. Now, one of the most powerful tools is a simple night splint. So many of us sleep with our elbows bent way up, putting constant strain on that ulnar nerve all night long. A simple brace, or hey, even a towel wrapped around your elbow, stops you from doing that. This gives your nerve an 8-hour vacation every single night to calm down and heal. A lot of people feel a difference in just a few weeks. Physical therapy is a more active approach. A therapist can show you specific exercises called nerve glides. The idea here is to gently and safely get the ulnar nerve to slide back and forth in its tunnel. It's not about aggressive stretching. It's more like flossing the nerve, just coaxing it back into its normal, happy, gliding motion.
Okay, let's wrap this up with the most empowering part, the little everyday changes you can make that bring huge relief. Here are 3 things you can do today. Seriously. If you're on the phone a lot, get a headset. Stop cradling the phone and kinking that nerve. Check your chair. Your elbows should be at a nice open angle, not digging into the armrests. And finally, set a timer. Get up, move around, and stretch every hour. It's really that simple. And here's a fascinating little detail. If you are using a splint at night, the goal isn't to lock your arm perfectly straight. Research actually shows that the sweet spot, the optimal angle, is about 45 degrees. That position gives the nerve the most room in the tunnel with the least amount of tension. It's the scientific sweet spot for healing. So I'll just leave you with this thought. The way you sit, the way you sleep, the way you work, it's all a constant conversation with your body. For your ulnar nerve, a bent elbow is like shouting at it for hours. So the real question is, are you listening? What's your posture saying to your body right now? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.